Alright, so this is a really quick tabletop review of the new Axiom midrange Hex, which is very comparable to a Buzzz. So I took it out to a field and did some work with it, and with a few different buzzes and with a few different hex. I threw about 30 shots in different winds and directions, and here's kind of what I took away from that. First, just kind of getting into the size of the disc. I wanted to compare that right away. The short version is the Buzzz is slightly bigger. It's slightly more diameter, slightly more height, and that's really about it. I at first just measured by feel, looking at it, and I'll just kind of do this really quick. You can see, I'll try to get that even. That's kind of the difference there. So you can see the Buzzz still in the background, whereas if you would flip it around and balance it, you're not going to see the hex. It's just a little bit more diameter. Now I was curious because I felt like it was bigger. I wanted to get the real numbers, and so the diameter of the hex is 21.4 centimeters. A Buzzz is 21.7, so 0.3 difference. The height on the hex is 1.6 centimeters, and the height on the Buzzz is about 1.9. So a little higher. Overall, this did feel a little smaller, but it wasn't dramatic of a difference. The rim width, it's actually a little bit wider on the Hex. It's 1.3 versus the 1.2 on the Buzzz. And then the depth is, I think it was rim depth, it was the same as 1.3 centimeters. So they're really similar, but you can kind of tell this has a less diameter. When it comes to the hand feel, and I'm not just saying this because it's a new release or you feel obligated to always go with the newest thing or whatever, this is the best feeling mid-range I've ever felt. Not just because the plastic is so nice, it's the actual fit in your hand is so comfortable, and it's very rounded and smooth. The underside has no sharp edge or flashing. It's kind of smooth, and so the release that you get is really, really clean. It just kind of, it fits right in, and it's a really, really nice feel. First thing I noticed when I just took them out of the package and checked them out, I was like, wow, this feels really nice. But I'm a huge fan of the Buzzz, and so I came down and wanted to compare them. And right off the bat, I like to line them up like that to check out the profile, and you can see the Hex is a lot smoother, more rounded, and the Buzzz kind of has that higher line, that higher shoulder, a little more squared of an edge, and then kind of a more abrupt down where that's kind of a smooth in down. Now this does have that wider rim just a little bit, so this sticks out a little bit more, but you don't notice much of a difference. But looking at it, they just look like different mid-range discs. But no joke, the Hex feels incredible. Best feel I've ever had with any disc. Flight, that's kind of the more important thing. And so I did compare not just one, but 3 Buzzes and 3 Hexes. And they pretty much flew about the same. They're very, very similar. Even though the numbers give this a turn of 1, fade of 1, I wasn't really getting that much of a turn, which I was really happy about. I was a little worried it would be kind of like a beat-in flippy Buzz, and I tested it with a fresh Buzz, a kind of medium season Buzz, and they kind of flew all about the same, except the Hex, I would say, might be even more stable. That is, these are brand new, they're fresh, so maybe that's the case, but these Buzzes aren't beat up. I know I've used them, but they're definitely not beat up. Anyway, so testing it into a headwind, this is where I thought, okay, the Hex is going to flip a lot more, or at least the same as the Buzzz. And I was really surprised ripping it into a headwind, not all out, full arm, but I snapped it level. Didn't try to get it nose up or nose down, just really nice and level, clean throw. But I gave it a good throw, and it resisted turn. It turns a little bit, even into a headwind, but it still fought back. And the fade, the hex actually fights out more. I think it's because the weighted outer rims and the fact that it is a little bit more of an outer rim kind of fights at the end flight phase. It just pulls it to the ground a little more aggressively. And so the fade on this was more than I was expecting. I wouldn't even call it a turn of -1. I would be like -0.5, and then a fade of 1.5. You could even argue it would be like a 2, but I mean, it fought out even in a headwind, but really overall straight flying disc, very, very similar to the Buzzz. Turn was about the same, but the Buzzz held longer. It kind of drifted. So into the headwind, it would rise up, kind of drift and drift and drift, and then kind of get that little seat and go down like this. The hex here would stand up and turn a little bit and then not drift. It would just lock on its line and go straight. And then it would kind of fight out harder, or I would say more abruptly. The fade in a lot of the gyro discs in general, I think is later in flight than single mold, but it's more aggressive for a comparable item. So is that good or bad? I mean, just whatever you like, whatever you're used to. But the way that this feels and how confident it felt in the hand and throwing and testing it on different angles, I mean, I'm gonna bag this for now over the Buzzz. Is it gonna stay that way? It's too early to tell, but honestly, I like this so much, and it's so similar that I think you're fine either way. You know, so if you're a Buzzz enthusiast and you never want to try a different mid-range, you don't have to. It's a great disc. But if you wanted a new disc that's a lot like a Buzzz, and it's probably the most superb plastic I've ever felt, the best hand feel I've ever felt, and the price point, these are $15. Now you can buy this disc for like $100, or you can buy this for $15. And which did I like better? The Hex a little bit. They're both good though. Like just because it's new, I can't be like, oh, it's great, it's the best, you need it. But I really liked it. It feels better in the hand, even though the Buzzz feels great in the hand. I mean, there's no arguing that. It's a nice feeling disc. But the underside of this, it's just a little smoother, a little more rounded, and then the snap, it just comes off with more kind of a confident direction. I only threw 30 shots, so I mean, I've been throwing Buzzz for over a decade, so it's like, you know, maybe it's the honeymoon phase, whatever. But yeah, really, really good disc. Liked it. Let's see, tested it in a headwind and similar, but surprisingly the Hex fought out more. In a tailwind, the Hex started to fade earlier and a little harder. But where did they end up? Really, really close to each other. I mean, 15 feet apart. So not a huge difference. On a level snap tunnel shot, and so this is typically what I use a stable mid-range for. Is you're playing in the woods, you want to get a shot that's going pretty much like dead straight. And how did they perform? Pretty good each. I mean, they both fly great. So it's apples to apples, I guess. The flight of the Hex is not mind-blowing. It's not so revolutionary that, you know, it's going to change the world, but it's really good. Not much else to say. I mean, I don't want to ramble, but what else did I put? Distance, overall distance. I wasn't trying to crush it. It's a mid-range. You don't want to just crush a mid-range all the time. It's not what I use a mid-range for. I mean, I'm using it to throw a controlled shot at a certain distance to kind of check up so that you're not overthrowing. So distance on a mid-range doesn't mean a whole lot to me. I'm thinking, you know, if a mid-range goes further than another, does that make it better? In my mind, no. It's just different. You know, it's just being aware of how it's going to fly. The Hex did typically go a little further. But it could be that because of that one turn, I kind of wanted to give it a little bit more pop just to see like, all right, is it going to turn too much, or is it going to hold that Anheuser long? Is it going to be inconsistent? What if I kind of give it a slight Anheuser release in this breeze that I was playing in, which was about 10, 15 miles per hour. So it was a significant wind. And I threw it in a direct headwind and on an Anheuser and with power. And it did hold. And it snapped up, kind of carried over. At about a 200-foot mark, I was aiming to fade left, right behind a tree and then kind of see what happens. And it drifted, went to flat, and then it had a little bit of a hyzer finish. So it can do a left-right Anheuser, but it's not really an understable disc. It's very stable. If this were a Discraft disc, they would probably call it a 0.5. If it were Innova, you know, the numbers obviously would be similar, but I think they would call it 0.2 or even 0.1, because that right off the bat, it didn't really seem to have some turn. I'm sure that after you use this for a while, maybe after 4, 5, 6 rounds with it, the numbers would be kind of exact. So right now I'm going to say numbers for the Hex is 5. Is it a 5 glide? I mean, maybe, kind of. I'm not going to argue with it. But the Buzzz is rated, I think 5.4, -1.1. And I would call the Buzzz a 5.4.0.1. And as it kind of gets worked in, it does get that little bit of turn. And that's kind of similar to this, but I feel like the fade is a little more abrupt and a little harder. But they do finish at the same point, because that hyzer, since it's harder, more abrupt, doesn't really mean it goes more left. It just kind of cuts to the ground more. And so the ultimate start to finish point was pretty identical. You can use whatever stable mid-range you like. This is a great option, mainly because I'm not kidding, it's the best feeling mid-range, and it might be the best feeling disc I've ever held. It just feels right. So yeah, which is the best? You can't say that just because this is new that it's better, but it's sure comparable. It's very, very similar. Now, the Axiom lineup used to have the Alias, which is still one of my favorite discs, and I was thinking, oh, this is going to be kind of the replacement for this. It's not. The Hex is much more like a Buzzz. The Alias was a slower disc, kind of a different, not goofy, but a different hand feel, and it is kind of a bulkier disc, smooth and rounded. It actually has kind of like a micro bead underneath. The Alias is the straightest mid-range disc I've ever thrown, start to finish. Barely any left to right movement, finishes pretty flat. Because it is slower and a little bulkier, it's able to throw like that. But if you're going for the more modern mid-ranges, which are all kind of speed 5s, this is going to fit into that category. I would still, these are out of print, by the way, unfortunately, but thankfully I've stocked up. As it beats up, it is like the smoothest straight to slight left-right flight that you're going to get throwing tunnel shots in the woods or high Anheisers or even hyzer flip to flat. I love the Alias, great disc. So sadly, the Hex does not replace that, but it does replace the Buzzz. You're not going to need both of these in your bag. If you love Buzzes, do you need a Hex? No. But if you want to replace it or find an option that's actually cheaper in the sense, because for how quality the plastic is on these and how good they feel, you know, anytime Discraft releases, or no, this is of course a different scenario, but like even this one, a Z-Glow Sparkle Buzzz ran me about 20, 25 or 28 from a store, not from somebody else. And this brand new is 15. You might see it a little more expensive in some other stores, but these aren't going to be more than $20 unless you're hitting up some collector site or whatever. Man, they're nice. I mean, they look great, feel great. So I really like the disc. I'm going to be bagging it right now. I'll take out the Buzzz. Who knows? I might be selling some Buzzes, which is weird, but they're both great. Like Discmania MD3 is a great disc. I was comparing it to the MD4. The MD4 is more overstable than both of these. I compared it to the MVP Glow Reactor, and the glow reactor is significantly more overstable than both of these. This really is the true, I would say it's a power stable. You can rip it and it's going to hold stable. It's not, you know, something you need to hyzer flip to flat for it to be a straight flight with that small fade at the end. Like, it's, you can rip it flat. You know, I'm not trying to overpower it, but like it holds. It's not gonna flip and ride unless you're gunning it into a headwind and you over torque a little bit. But because it's so controllable, like you can throw anhyzers, you can throw hyzers, you can throw flat. It's just a good all-around mid-range, and I only threw it 30 times, so time will tell. I'm going to be playing this weekend, so put that in the bag. And yeah, I guess that's it. I'll wrap it up.